What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the show, the Coinist Podcast. Welcome to the channel. Hit that subscribe button right down below. I'm your host, Luke, and while you sit at home quarantined, hopefully you're staying healthy, staying safe, washing your hands. Genuinely hope that all of you are all right. I want to bring you some content that keeps your mind busy, keeps you entertained, bringing you top investors, best analysts, biggest exchanges, and some really, really good stories from Bitcoin investors, why they're betting on Bitcoin, how they see this all shaping up. With today's episode, I have on McDonald. This one was an absolute hit. I really think you guys are going to enjoy it. You can listen to it on iTunes and Spotify right down below if you prefer, or if you want to watch it, you're in the right place. McDonald, you might know him if you've played poker. He's up there, number 52 on the all-time money list, and was smashing out six-figure, seven-figure wins when he was just 18 years old. A poker legend, also known as Timex. He's also dabbled quite a bit in the Bitcoin and crypto markets. We have some really epic stories there. Why he's betting on Bitcoin. He's someone that has skin in the game and is ahead of almost all trends that everyone is talking about right now. He knew that a lot of events would be canceled for coronavirus. So we talk about how he knew that impact, why he's betting on Bitcoin, some poker stories, why he's, what he thinks about the crypto market, all that good stuff. We cover a lot of ground, so really hope you guys enjoy this one. And before we get into the episode, just want to give a quick shout out to the companies that sponsor this episode. Go check them out. eToro right above my head. Best place for US traders to buy and sell crypto. Also, Bybit Exchange sponsors this. If you're a trader, go check them out. Their platform is great, and they don't have overload. Check them out. Links right down below this video to get set up. And also CryptoTrader.tax. You have more time to do your taxes. So if you're procrastinating in 5 minutes, they get it done. Go to CryptoTrader.tax and automate your taxes. All right, guys, enjoy the show. That's the sponsors. That's the intro. And enjoy this one. See you guys next time. McDonald, welcome to the show, brother. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, man. Long time coming. I was telling you before we started this, I listened to you a while back. I was playing some poker recreationally, not at the level that you've played it in the past. Some recreational poker in the past years. A lot of poker guys who have made the transition to crypto. We're going to talk about why you made that transition. But first off, it's good to check in on people right now. How are you doing? How's Canada right now? Are you staying healthy? And what's the scene look like there?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say Canada right now is doing pretty well. All things considered, a couple of years, not a couple of years ago, a couple of weeks ago, I would have said Trudeau is handling this even worse than Trump is, kind of thing. And then Trudeau's wife got coronavirus. And then it was like, something snapped and he's like, oh shit, this thing is real. So now he's been quarantined, and the measures in Canada going forward seem very good. They seem very on the ball. It seems like the community's taking it seriously. In my town, we have one of the biggest St. Patrick's Day celebrations in the country. 40,000 people come out and they're all drinking on the same street. And it's all dumbass 19-year-olds or whatnot who just are like, so desperate to get drunk. And it was just, the whole city was kind of terrified that this was just going to be like an outbreak of coronavirus, and the kids all stayed at home. There was no party this year, and it's almost unheard of. You see these spring breakers down in Florida and stuff like that, and it really makes me feel like Canada's starting to take this thing seriously. Not a lot of cars on the road. Everybody's, nobody. Yeah, it just seems like the country is starting to take it seriously. I mean, we're still due for massive widespread outbreak. Canada and in the States, I think both of our numbers are way under the true numbers. Probably a lot of people aren't showing symptoms yet, but so we're still in for big numbers. But I think we can probably keep it out of the tens of millions, I guess. So that's the hope, I suppose. But yeah, no, it's it feels nice seeing people starting to worry about their community and take things seriously.
Definitely. Part of me wonders, I mean, looking at what's happening in Florida, a younger me, I wonder if I would have cared. But also, the warm weather, I mean, is one thing. How cold is it in Canada right now? Are people staying inside because it's a choice, or is it still cold as hell? What's the weather like?
No, it's probably like 45 here or something like that. Okay. And it's 45. You could wear shorts when it's 45 when you're used to Canada. So it's we've even had, I think we've even had a couple of days above 50, 55 kind of thing. So it's not nice, but it's definitely especially when the days are getting longer. This is definitely the time of year when people are excited to start getting outside, and the fact that they're staying inside. It's not like it's zero or anything like that.
I played hockey a lot growing up. I've probably taken more trips to Canada than anyone I know, and I still would not wear shorts in 45. Man, that's insane. It's insane.
I don't either. There are definitely some people who do, but that's a slight exaggeration.
All right. Well, I've been keeping a tally, kind of a running tally. I think a lot of people have, especially those of us that spend too much time on Twitter, of who was ahead of this Corona stuff versus who kind of caught on late. Admittedly, I didn't understand the severity and the impact and kind of what it would do to financial markets as well until a little bit too late. You were one of the people actually that I noticed that was pretty early in this. And one of the things that caught my eye, you made a bet about the WSOP happening this year. You made a bet that it wasn't going to happen. How did you see that so early?
Yeah, I mean, well, that wasn't even that early. That was probably only 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I've been, I think Suzu was tweeting about this over 2 months ago. I was like January 19th. I first got, my first tweets about how big of a deal I think it was were like January 28th. Closing in on 2 months ago, and it's just, it's been around for a while, and at that stage it was, it was still a little more niche, I suppose, but it was people still thought the WSOP was going to happen until pretty late February, and so those bets we made, they were like, I don't know, February 20th or 24th or somewhere in that kind of range, where it's definitely not early. I guess I think just a lot of people, I think I think it's such a North American thing where you see bad things going on in the world and you think, well, those happen to other parts of the world. Those don't happen to us.
Sure.
And, if it's something like, if you take, like, let's say you take something like a genocide or whatnot, it kind of like makes sense that genocides don't happen in countries like America very often, and they happen in countries with, bad economies and, a lot of desperate people more often or something. But, a pandemic doesn't discriminate, kind of, and a lot of these forms of pain and suffering, they do discriminate, and they happen in the places that are not well off, and they don't happen in the places that are well off. And I think it's gotten North America and Europe to really turn their brain off and not realize that, like, this isn't a normal enemy. This is not like guys with guns coming in. This is someone that will can kill anything and everything, and it's something we're not used to wrapping our head around, because it's been over 100 years since we've had something of this nature. So yeah, I think it just it was pretty smack in our face, but I think people almost, even though it was the writing was all over the walls, I think people just kind of choose to assume it won't happen in a place like America. It won't happen in a place like Canada.
Yep. I definitely fell victim to that thinking. What were the odds when you first laid that out, though? They were pretty advantageous for people that were betting it wasn't going to happen. What were you looking for, like 20 to 1? Or I think, because the reason I'm asking, I saw Doug Polk was asking, and I think those odds have come down a ton as people, and this is happening in the stock market as well, right? There's a lot of parallels you could draw. As you start to understand how impactful this is, also, how long does it last? When will people be able to go to work again? When do we have to quarantine until? Now people are starting to say, oh shit, and the NBA games get canceled. I was watching that live and I was like, man, that seems a little bit crazy. They're going to start canceling the NBA games. They're sending all these people home, all these things. And I was like, oh God, why? I would never go to a stadium full of people right now. What were the odds originally? Because I think a lot of people are coming around to the same bet.
Yeah, so I think this is just a good example where people are, it's so easy to be reactive and it's so difficult to be proactive. And I think a lot of people, everybody who sees that Bitcoin isn't 20,000 anymore, it just says, oh, of course I would have sold. If Bitcoin was 20,000, I would have sold. I don't know a single guy who sold over 18,000 kind of thing. I've heard stories of people who sold Bitcoin over 18,000, but I feel like they're like unicorns that don't actually exist. And then, everyone says, oh, obviously I would have bought when Bitcoin dipped to 3,000. I maybe know a half dozen guys who got buys in, under 3,200 or whatnot. It's just, everything looks great in hindsight, but it's tough to do in the moment. And so with this one, it was, the odds were, I saw Doug was making bets at 20 to 1. And then I came in and said, I'll do 16 to 1. And I just said, fuck it, I'll do 12 to 1. It's just like, move the market enough, because like in my head, the number I had in my head was sort of maybe 2.5 to 1 might be the real odds. And even while I thought it was 2.5 to 1, I kind of felt like I'm probably just being too optimistic because I don't want this to happen. It's the back of my brain. The back of my brain sort of felt like it might just be 100% to get canceled. It's tough to get a vaccine. Even if a vaccine was made that day, it's tough to get a vaccine to 300 million people in your country, and not to mention the 7 billion worldwide who could show up. So it's just like when you see exponential growth, it's a fucking scary thing. And yeah, so it's just, when I saw people are thinking this is happening, I'm just kind of thinking, like, how could it possibly happen? It's grow. People see the numbers in America; they were so low early on, just because of massive suppression. Like you hear there's 30 people in one nursing home that have it, and there's only 40 people in the country. It's like, no fucking way. It's just, those numbers are likely off, but you could just see that they were trying to delay it, admitting just how rampant this thing has run. And I think it led to North America being kind of a week and a half, late to making some of the actions they should have made sooner. But yeah, so when I saw that, it was just, it just seemed like lunacy to me. Again, I still probably, if I wouldn't have, if someone wanted to say it wouldn't happen, I still probably would have laid them 2 to 1 that it would happen or whatnot, where it felt like, hey, the market can't be that bad kind of thing. In the back of my head, it felt, so anyway, yeah, we, it wasn't like a ton of bets were placed here. But it was been interesting to see that coming down. And, now people are talking, it's probably 10 to 1 underdog to happen or something like that. Like, it's just completely flipped in the other direction. I think whoever is making the decisions at the WSOP just kind of, maybe there's someone who still thinks it's just the flu, or maybe there's someone who's just so, depressed about the situation they don't want to make a press release. But,
Sure.
Every other poker tournament in the world is getting canceled. And they, the first event there are probably only, 9 weeks away or something, and they still haven't said anything. I know poker players that have rented houses out there, go rent a house for 2 months, put down some, $8,000 deposit or whatever it ends up costing. And then now that money's all gone. And it sucks when people who do this for a living, they plan their lives around the WSOP, and to have the WSOP not have made a statement, they've got to talk soon. And I imagine it'll, probably come out like late this month or very early next month. But yeah, that's that one has been, that was probably one of the most mispriced markets I've seen.
You've made a bit of a living kind of finding those mispriced markets. We'll talk about poker shares in a second and whether people can still make that bet. But I was just thinking, the number that smacked me in the face today was, now they're testing these NBA players, and there was like, of each team they test, it's like 3 or 4 players are positive. And I understand that those players travel a lot, and sure, they probably interact with more people than the average person. But it's like, my God, if 3 or 4 NBA players on every team is testing positive, we got to really think about impact. And I hope the data does force some people to wake up. It seems like a lot of poker players, people that professionally bet, traders, people that are looking at numbers a lot are on the right side of this trade so far. I don't want to call it a trade, but right side of anticipating this, as opposed to some people that like to doubt it. With poker shares and you finding those mispriced markets, like you just said, how did that come about, right? You transitioned from full-time poker player, professional poker player. When I listened to your conversation with Joe Ingram a while back, this was like a year ago, I know you don't play poker professionally anymore because you transitioned into this role. How did you creating poker shares come about? What was the opportunity there?
Yes, I suppose the opportunity there is that, back in the day, 2013, probably 2013 or 2014 was about when it was at its worst. You had the situation where, okay, you hop into a 500 person poker tournament. Most of the profit gets eaten up by the 50 best players or something. The 50 best players are making so much more than the 200 best players.
Sure.
But then and also because of just like compounding returns, these 50 top players, they usually have enough money that they don't need investors in these tournaments. But then you have players 51 through 250, or sometimes even 51 through to 500, who take on investors in these tournaments, and they would always sell at these decent premiums, and you kind of have this marketplace where people want to invest, they never get to invest in the good players. They only really get to invest in like the tier 4 type players or whatnot. And there's no real downward force on the market. It's kind of like when stock market bans short selling or something like that, where you can only have real upward pressure. People just sell to the highest bidder. And I would just look at this and I just thought, this shit is criminal. You have these people that are 10% losers selling at a 35% premium. So we came out with the idea of just kind of like make a derivatives market where if someone's selling themselves at a 35% premium, hey, you can invest in that player through me at a 25% premium. And instead of them screwing someone out of 45%, I'm screwing them out of 35%, but the investor gets a better deal. And so this, the biggest thing that has happened, and that's what PokerShares is effectively. It's a platform for investing in poker players. And, there's no kind of, secret to it. We believe every player on our site is overpriced, but we think that everyone, most other people are, especially at the time when they launched, even more overpriced, I guess. So, it's basically, and then the other thing that's nice, especially for fans at home, they have access to those top 50 players. You can invest in, Daniel Negreanu, or you can invest in, a lot of these players, that you might not otherwise have access to. So we effectively launched that. And I mean, the biggest positive that has come from that, beyond just it being a successful business, is it's made the premiums people charge at much more sane within the community. A lot of these guys that were charging a 50% premium, 6 years ago, are now charging a 10% premium when they know if they sell at something that isn't profitable for investors, we're going to undercut them, kind of thing. So it's just like, it's just kind of been a sort of a force on the market to keep keep things at bay. And so it was definitely I guess that would be kind of how that all came about. And the opportunity was largely just how insanely overpriced everything was years ago, and there's still a decent amount of that, but now the user base is a lot more the super successful non-professional players wanting to invest in themselves. Like if you're some billionaire hedge fund manager or whatnot, playing a 5 or 10 grand poker tournament's not that exciting for you. So being able to buy 200% more of yourself, and often at a discount because you're not a pro. So for a lot of our business is driven from these uber successful guys who know they're just playing for fun, and then also driven more by like the fan market of people who want exposure to the biggest name players who otherwise wouldn't be selling. So that's kind of what it's transitioned to more the last year or two.
That makes sense. The market, I think you could have taken that bet that you made though on the WSOP happening. Do you offer other markets of just betting on poker players on there now too?
Yeah. So I mean, one thing that we added recently is we added political betting, where we were just looking around thinking, the U.S. election, even it fascinates me, and I would love Trump to get out of power, and it's just something. It's nice to have a rooting interest as well. And I was kind of looking for platforms that I could bet on, and it's like you look through and you see Predict It, max bets are tiny and they charge these crazy cash out fees. Betfair doesn't allow Canadians. FTX seems pretty cool about this, but FTX doesn't allow anybody. FTX doesn't allow you if you're Canadian, American, UK, EU, Hong Kong, Singapore. They basically, it's out of like a Brazilian and Australian guy betting back and forth with each other or something.
I think Sam's gonna fix that. I don't want to cut you off. I think Sam will slowly fix that. I think he was really excited to get it out. At least that's what he told me. Right? They want to play by the rules, as I'm sure you've had to play around with regulations as well, and then hopefully they can get it out there.
Yeah, I've talked to Sam a little bit about this, and it seems like they're doing everything by the book, which, especially when you see how a lot of other kind of operators in both gambling and crypto do it. I respect guys who go and do it by the book, where their lives are going to be a lot easier than the lives of guys who don't do things by the book, I suppose. Sure. But yeah, so I just saw this and I thought, hey, like, why? There are so many people interested in U.S. politics on in the poker world. Let's start trying to become a platform for politics betting. I think we've had a lot more traffic through that than we anticipated. We've been allowing bets on so right now 2 of the best Omaha players in the world are playing each other 25,000 hands over the course of a few months. You've been watching the Golf.
I watched a little bit.
Right. Yep. Okay, nice. So we've been allowing people to bet on who wins that, and then excuse me. And then on top of that, we can bet on who wins each session. You can place a bet on who's going to win today, who's going to lose tomorrow, etc. And then we've been adding, we added some, some WSOP type markets. Basically, we're kind of in the business of just allowing people to bet on, whatever, I guess. And, we think that, we think that if something will drive traffic, and we think it's possible to price it well, or at the very minimum, it's possible to get people betting similar amounts on both sides, we're pretty open to offering just about anything.
I'm curious, thinking about the WSOP bet, thinking about political bets, and also, I guess the toughest one I imagine for you, and I have no idea, this is just kind of me thinking off the top of my head, would be pricing poker players who just don't have a lot of history. That seems like the toughest one. But how the hell do you price these markets? And in financial markets, in the stock market, it's the most efficient market in the world. There's a ton of money on each side. So the amount of alpha, the percentage that hedge fund managers are looking for are very small percentages, right? You're trying to outperform the index or whatever by 2%. You look at crypto, it's a little bit more inefficient. So, people have insane swings of multiple returns. In trying to price how well a poker player is that has almost no history, or trying to price something like, will Galfon beat this mysterious anonymous, poker player, or, what's going to happen with Trump and Biden with everything happening in the world. How the hell do you price this? And are you taking directional bets, or are you just trying to make the spread? How does that all work?
Yeah, so that was a lot of questions all at once.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. I'll try to answer, some of them, and then if there's anything want me to touch on, we
Sure.
can ask that as well. So the first thing I'll say is up until I was maybe 5-6 years ago, like I always wanted to believe the efficient market hypothesis. It's like it's just like you hear it, it makes sense. So many smart people agree with it and whatnot. And it's just like it seemed to me like markets aren't really beatable, I guess. And then you see as poker started getting tougher, I'd see some friends of mine getting into sports betting, and I would just think, markets are efficient. Like, how are you going to beat some bookie or whatnot? And, so many of them have built successful careers off of sports betting. And then I think, oh, like, okay, maybe it's not that tough. And then you see crypto. And, when I got into crypto, I just sort of, I started thinking, all this trading people are doing, it's mostly just gambling back and forth. And then, I start forming opinions myself. And, I think my opinions are right more than 50% of the time. And I start seeing there's a larger community of people whose opinions are also right more than 50% of the time. Okay, maybe these markets aren't that efficient either. And then you see, we're on the verge of this big pandemic, and the stock market keeps hitting all-time highs again and again and again. And you're just like, what the fuck is going on? It's all broken, and you just, no one knows how to price anything. And it's just like when you actually sit there and you try to price something that's so difficult to price, you assume a bookie's a good example. I guess you assume some bookie has some like crazy model to price everything. And then you actually go and try to price things yourself, and you're like, my God, this is fucking tough. And you sort of, and I think it's been good both for, you have constant risk management going on, but then it's also beneficial on the flip side of the coin, where when you see the price of something, or you see the odds of something, like the more time you've spent being the guy having to make the market, the more that it's easier to kind of put yourself in the shoes of the guy making the market, be like, he doesn't even have he has no more fucking idea what he's doing than I do, kind of thing. So to answer it, we try to find, we try to find prices that we think work in these circumstances. We think our models for how we price things in poker terms, we think are pretty good. To touch on your question of an unknown player, it's nice where, we don't offer a two-sided market. I think offering a two-sided market on these unknown players is virtually impossible. But when you offer just a one-sided market, basically our mentality is take the information we know about someone and assume that they're as good as they could plausibly be given the information we have. So, if you just show up at a poker table and I know the 40 best poker players in the world, okay, I treat you as if you're the 41st best poker player in the world. Okay. Someone shows me a hand you played bad. Okay, maybe that a good player wouldn't play. I'm like, okay, he's probably not a top 2,000 poker player. And, it's like, we figure out, you keep on, our site, we're starting to add a casino. We have dice there. It's like, oh, we see you're playing dice every day. Okay, you're probably not a top 10,000. So you keep on reevaluating the profile of the person that is betting. And so generally just the more information, the better you can do. And with these guys that we have a lot of information on, the top few hundred most relevant players, we could definitely offer two-way markets on them. But when some random guy who I have no mutual friends with asks what his price is, we basically close our eyes, throw a dart. It's definitely there is not much method to the madness, I suppose. And then you asked about the Galfond challenge. Well, there, just through playing pro poker, would have some people who have played with either or both opponents you can talk to, can look at the consensus of other people. You can also you get a handle for which guys on our platform are doing this for fun and which guys are doing it for profit. And when bets keep coming in on one side from guys you view as sharp, you kind of weigh those bets more heavily. And if bets keep coming in on one side from guys aren't so sharp, you weigh those differently. And so you just kind of you just kind of get to know the user base, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that, and then the politics stuff. I mean, we really have no clue. What we tend to do, I'm not gonna lie, is we just sort of follow what other people are doing. We follow 538's model, and then we also just try to guess. We try to guess that, hey, maybe calling a pandemic a hoax isn't going to help your chance in an election. Maybe we should try to price it such that we can get short on Trump. It's like, okay, with different things, like that, we've just tried to, we've also done, a fair bit of guesswork, but I would say the politics stuff, it's totally akin to like a poker player who's never studied, who just does everything by gut feel. There's we've done a ever so small amount of consulting on other places, but in general, guessing, I suppose.
Yeah. A little bit of guesswork, market data probably helps. It's just wild to see, because you're making that market, right? You're providing that liquidity. You have to provide the price. It's what most betting sites that people have bet on are familiar with. It's wild to see FTX, and I'm glad you've checked them out before and spoke with Sam. I bet you guys have a ton you can talk about there, but it's wild to see what they're doing in the sense that it is bi-directional, and they show you the order books, right? So I could start making a price on there, and you could chart out the actual probabilities, all those different things. I wonder if all kind of sports books in the future, maybe this is me being way too optimistic, would have a model like that. Like, do you think that's possible, that everything could operate like an FTX model? I mean, how amazing would that be? Like, as a sport game goes on, even if you're live betting or it's before an event, it's the NBA Finals, you could actually see the order book, see where big money has some bids or sells, or what they think the probabilities are. That'd be insane. Am I too optimistic in thinking that could happen?
No, I mean, the guy who does that well is going to end up a 10 billionaire. He's not going to end up a billionaire. He's going to end up a 10 billionaire. And it's just like, as soon as I saw it, like literally, an hour or 2 hours after the Trump market got posted, I woke up and I saw it. I messaged my business partner and I was just like, this is it. You have places with trading where you can trade in game against other people, whether it's
Sure.
horse racing or football or whatnot. But they're all pretty slow. There's not that much liquidity in the book, and also I do think that the big thing that these things need is you need a sizable maker rebate. You need something like, basically I would say something along the lines of take BitMEX's fees and multiply by 10 or 20, where it's like if you're in the book, your fees are negative 0.5%, and if you're not or negative 0.25% or whatnot, and if you're not in the book, your fees are 0.75% or 1.5%, where it's basically at that point you make it large enough that if you want to use a normal bookie, you can never have in-game betting in the sense of a play is going on, guy catches the football, he's running up to the defender, and you're buying, you're selling or whatnot. But it's like if you have a big enough maker taker spread, you can have just an order book that's running around the clock, and people are getting a big enough rebate that they're willing to be in the book even when these kind of chunky plays happen, and you just be trading a sports game the whole game long. This would be yeah, I mean, it's like we talked, you know, my business partner are quite in agreement that this is the big idea, and if we really wanted to get like FU money, this is this is the way to do it. But it just, you know, I find it, you know, I find it stressful enough running, you know, small businesses. Trying to run a big business, just it'll take too many years off my life. So, you know, if someone's watching that and they're thinking, how do I become, you know, the 10 billionaire? You know, I think the guy that does the best job of having sports get traded through an order book is going to just make an ungodly amount of money. Yeah, it's just going to be the funnest gambling product you could have is just a proper, efficient market where just like everyone is, you know, everyone is kind of, you know, running bots the same way BitMEX. You want to be front of the book, trying to get that make a rebate. Everyone's doing that on sports, and just kind of plays happen. People push it to a new market, and just have sports get traded that way around the clock. I think, and also then you can earn so much in terms of fees. Instead of a guy making one $100 bet before a game, and he makes, you know, he loses 3%, you make $3 off him. He makes his $100 bet, you know, loses 1/4%. Okay, well, it's not going his way. Now he flips to the other side,
Sure.
loses another 1/4%, flips again. You know, it's just like you can just be churning that all the time. He can cash out his position into liquidity. You know, if he's bored by the game because it's a blowout, you know, he can sell. He can, you know, let's say an hour in, his team's up 3-0. He knows they're going to win. Okay, he can sell it at 98 cents on the dollar and go focus on the next game that started 30 minutes later, and just, you know, allow people to trade this around the clock. You know, I mean, I'm sure that, you know, I don't think we're geniuses for having this. I'm sure there's 1,000 guys, 5,000 guys like us with that idea. But, you know, as with any business, you know, the idea is 10% and the implementation is 90. And, you know, I'm excited to use something like this when it gets big. But yeah, this will be, you know, I think that's the future of gambling.
It has to be. I mean, not only for sports. Sports is like such a small subset of what it could be. Prediction markets, right? Political markets. That's another small set. It could be on everything, like every world event almost. Financialized. It's what holds back, I think, a lot of markets. I was talking to Joey Krug, who made Augur, and he's just so he gets so fired up about it. He's like, that's I mean, you know, Bovada has to cut you off if you're a sharp bettor. I imagine you have to deal with that kind of stuff too. You have to reprice poker players if you can see smart money coming in on them. It's like, if you have an order book and if everyone can provide liquidity, let the market, right? If someone's an idiot, let them just get wasted there on the book. So it's like, it's wild to see that happen. You're kind of at the forefront of it. One of those things, quantifying what's going to happen, it's fascinating to me. We could talk about that all day, but I do want to bring it back to crypto for people that are listening, that are invested in Bitcoin. I also, when I started following you, saw you were pretty into Bitcoin. How did you make this leap? Why is Bitcoin one of the bets that you're focused on? I'm going to assume that you have a bullish outlook on Bitcoin long term because you're still here, you're still focused on it. How and why did you make that bet on Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I'll go a little bit over my Bitcoin history, I suppose.
Sure.
And so so early 2013, a friend of mine who like I respect him for a lot of things, but generally not financial things, was telling me to invest in Bitcoin. You know, it was maybe 150 a coin back then. And, you know, I remember I just had him over to my place. We were doing some barbecuing, and he was taking me aside, and he's like, I'm putting 100% of my net worth into Bitcoin. This is absolutely going to over 10,000 a coin, and I'm not going to sell a single coin until it's over 10,000 a coin, and you should do the same. And, you know, so this is what he's telling me with this insane degree of conviction. And it's a guy, probably one of the smartest people I know, probably 160 IQ or something like that. But every financial decision he's made his entire life has been bad. And so it's just like, I'm over there where it's like, I'd seen dozens of mentions of Bitcoin, maybe hundreds of mentions of Bitcoin with, you know, steals with clubs back in the day and things like that. But this was the first time that, you know, someone I know was saying, okay, they're going heavy on Bitcoin. So this happened at, you know, 150 bucks a coin or whatnot. And that was the first serious exposure I had. And then, you know, cut to sort of late 2013, early 2014, kind of at the top of that cycle, I finally decided to buy some Bitcoin. I think I bought 25 Bitcoin at 800 bucks a coin, like, you know, within a few days of the top or something. And then put it on, you know, I didn't really understand it. I didn't do any research on it. Put it on Cryptsy, and then a year later, someone tells me Cryptsy got hacked, your money's gone. And I'm just like, well, Bitcoin fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at that point it had tanked in price. My 20 grand investment was maybe worth 11 grand or something like that.
Sure.
But it was just, you're just like, oh, well, this thing's stupid. So, I kind of told myself, okay, I don't like Bitcoin. I don't want to be around this thing. My first buy was, late 2013, early 2014, but, just was effectively not in the space for a while. And, with poker, you do so much investing in other players, trying to get money to different countries, et cetera, et cetera. And I just kind of noticed this thing where at that stage, I'd hear about Bitcoin, once every 6 months. And then someone would ask me about Bitcoin once every 3 months. And someone would ask me about Bitcoin once a month. And then people would ask me about Bitcoin like every week or two. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, don't people know that you just put money into this and then it's gone? But then it was like, eventually enough people were asking me about this that I just felt like, hey, it seems like something that a lot of people I respect are getting more into. And this would have taken me to about mid 2016 or so. And then I finally decided, okay, even though I had about a year completely away from crypto, and I was never really in crypto, I just had made one buy and didn't control my keys and it was gone. And then I kind of decided, okay, like this actually, a lot of people I respect are into this. Let's give it a second try and let's actually start researching quite a bit. So, I started, I just kind of decided, yeah, other people have done well. It seems like a lot of smart people into this, started reading more about the technology and just kind of got in the habit of, if someone owes me money and they have Bitcoin, try to get paid in Bitcoin. Try to do everything I can to not pay other people in Bitcoin, but basically, use it. Yeah, just figure rather than trying to, accumulate cash. Like I felt like the stock market was at a high-ish price already. Wasn't trying to really buy more stocks or anything. And I was like, oh, Bitcoin just seems like a good thing. And then just kind of, started, rolling kind of, money that I was, winning, whether investing in players or whatnot, into Bitcoin. And then, at some point, I think it would have been around when Bitcoin broke 3K for the first time that I first decided, like, okay, what started out as just something, I was mostly investing in because I felt underweight on it, was finally becoming something that, okay, I'm starting to get like, overweight on it, both, the 3 to 4x price increase. Like I think I started buying at 900 a coin. The 3 or 4x price increase plus just, was relatively fortunate with gambling during that time. And it was just like, okay, like I should actually probably get a more informed opinion, either sell more or, at least understand this even better. And then, got to the point I was listening to a few hours of podcasts a day, reading more books, and just like, just kind of absorbing everything I could, and just kind of got, more and more and more obsessed with it, I suppose. And then it was around the time of the BCH fork where basically, like, I'd never done any trading. Like I don't even think I had an account on any exchanges until mid 2017 or so. But around the BCH fork, one of my friends, he has like, quite a lot of Bitcoin or whatnot. He's the type of guy bought in early, never really touched it, etc. And, we were just like asking to like borrow his BCH to trade with and, give him 20% of the profits. We'll cover losses if an exchange steals from us or whatnot. And my friend and I were just kind of sitting at our computer and just be like, oh, BCH, it's 11 million sats here and only 9.5 million sats here. Sell for 11 million, buy for 9.5, and just like sitting there. And we're just like, what the fuck is going on? Just like from a trading perspective, it's just like how the hell is no one doing this? And so we started brainstorming how maybe we should start like trying to automate this, have some more maybe hire some developers to get into this, and just actually start thinking about like just arbitraging crypto exchanges. And then things slowed down a little bit during kind of September 2017 when Bitcoin fell from 5K to 3K. And then we were thinking, maybe it's more, more competitive than it was. But then you had like the futures news and you had the crazy pump. And then basically it was throughout October, November, November of that year, I only slept 22 times, where it was just like, we would just sit at our computer and it would just be like, you just look at a couple different exchanges and you're like, oh, Monero's here. Oh, our buddy has Monero. Tell them to send us our Monero. We'll sell it and buy it back 6% cheaper. And we just sit. We each had like 6 or 8 different shit coins, but we were just like sit there trading, and we're just like, who the fuck is doing this? And then actually at that point then started reaching out to reaching out to some developers to actually build software to, automate this process. And then just kind of, just kind of I've never been too much of a speculator in terms of trying to find, directional things. I've never really believed much in shitcoins, but I've always felt like, hey, if I've got some shitcoins and I can sell them and then buy them and take my profits in Bitcoin, okay, I love Bitcoin. That's kind of sweet. So that was kind of when things got really serious, where it was, by late 2017, I was spending way more time on crypto trading than I was on poker shares, and throughout 2018 was probably the most hours I've ever worked in my life, just completely focused on crypto trading. And yeah, it was just kind of that was it's nothing like what it was kind of at the top. Like if people think if people who weren't around during late 2017, early 2018, they might not appreciate that. Like the graph looks ridiculous, but if you look at the graph, like let's say instead of you look at the Bitcoin graph, you look at the price of Bitcoin on Binance, subtract the price on Coinbase or whatnot. You look, say you pull that graph up, you look at it, it's like 0.00000. Last Thursday, maybe it got up to $100 or a couple $100 difference on the craziest day we've seen in like the most volatile day in Bitcoin history. And then, but normally it's like under 0.3% spread. And like, then you go and look to late 2017, early 2018, you would have times when, Coinbase was 9% more expensive than any other exchange, and it stayed that way for a whole fucking week. It's just, it's very, that was kind of, I've never, again, I think I've never really done, or my exposure was less on the side of trying to speculate when it's going up, when it's going down. For me, as someone who had pretty good timing and I'd only really seen the way up, I would buy every dip, which kind of worked great until the last one. Yeah, exactly. So I definitely, I was definitely, my business partner was like a little more savvy than I was, where, he bought quite a bit kind of, at the top in, 2014, and then he bought the way down, bought it for, 1,100, then bought it for 900, then 700, then 500, then 400, then 300. And then it was like, he didn't have any buys at 200 or 150, because at that point he had totally written it off as a scam. But he's just like, he's seen the depression of going from 1,100 down to 150. And, I think he was always kind of like the sobering voice, just being like, hey, Mike, you're a noob. You've never seen a real dip. Like for me, I'm like, I saw the dip from 1,200 to 700. I saw 1,800 to 1,200. I saw 3K to 1,800. I saw 5K to 3K. I saw 9,500 to 5,600. I in my head I had seen all these dips, but these were 40% dips that retraced themselves in 6 weeks.
Oh yeah.
And now it's been now we're at lower prices than we were 2.5 years ago. And so it's definitely like I only seen part of the market. So it's like my trading was just kind of like, I would never short Bitcoin because it only goes up, kind of thing. And now I feel like I've got a little bit wiser. We'll long it occasionally, we'll short it occasionally, but in general, I'm just a long-term believer. The belief has always just been try to accumulate more Bitcoin, and yeah, that's just kind of been the mentality there, I suppose.
How the dips have evolved. God, the 2 years ago's consensus in New York, I was visiting two buddies. One's an investment banker. One works at private equity. I think he's actually he might be in Connecticut now. But anyways, we were in New York, and it was like when Bitcoin had first crossed 10K, he's like, oh, fuck that. It's a scam. You guys are making too much money, all this stuff. Just talking generally about kind of everyone involved in crypto. And at the time, I think it dipped to like, 8,500 or 6K, whatever it was, like in 48 hours. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, fuck, maybe he's right. Maybe he actually did call the top. And I think literally by the time I flew home from New York, it's already at 11K and surging higher. And I was like, yeah, right, man. These dips, the dips are crazy, but just stay long and all this stuff. So it's wild. I have a question. Your buddy that got you into it, and he said he was never going to sell until 10K. Did he follow through with that plan? Did he sell at 10K? Did he hold through all the madness?
Yeah, and he's held through still now. He sold I think over the entire time he's probably sold less than 5% of his Bitcoin. And like, I've asked him about his sells, and he regrets some. He's like, oh yeah, like my friend, he wanted to get into it, like I sold him half a coin. He bought a lot of Bitcoin, and he's like, every single sell pains him, where he's, it's like, I still, okay, here's how bullish he is, where I love this answer, where we were talking about at what point he thinks Bitcoin starts becoming a good sell. Like this, and I'll mention that this happened like, probably within a couple of weeks of the top in 2017. Maybe we're at 16K Bitcoin. No, maybe it might have been a little earlier, maybe like 12 or 13K Bitcoin. And we're having a conversation about like at what point to start selling. And he tells me the price that we should consider selling. Guess what his price is.
Gosh, if he's that bullish, I would say like, I don't know, 30K, 50K. I don't know, 25K.
Higher.
Oh God. I'd probably start saying 75K, 100K numbers. The normal.
We're going higher.
He's talking higher. Like 250 million a coin.
Oh, higher than the million.
What the hell? I don't know, man. Like what is that? It starts putting you at 10 trillion total market. I don't know. He's saying it's bigger than gold. That's when he's selling.
Yeah. So he comes. The thing I love. He says he's going to start selling at 4 million. Like I love that it's not 1 million. It's not 10 million.
So specific.
He's come up that the number is 4 million. Like at 2 million, he thinks it's too small of a percent of the world's wealth. At 10 million, he thinks he's gotten greedy, and he doesn't really believe that, he doesn't believe that all dollars are going to become worthless one day. And, a 10 million or higher type estimate kind of assumes that all the world's wealth is in Bitcoin kind of. And 4 million, that might put you around the point where, I don't know, half or a third of the world's wealth is in Bitcoin or something like that. But it was just, yeah. So he hasn't sold, and he might, like, he has a couple of years living expenses and stuff like that. It's not in Bitcoin, but he's still that bullish. Where I kind of assumed that he would have sold something. I think he regrets when BCH was like 4K or something. I think he regrets not selling some BCH or selling some BTG, shit like that. But yeah, no, it's like that degree of bullish. I mean, I think it's a little bit insane, but it also is, the goal, like it in the same way it felt, in the same way, I guess, that it felt weird that the WSOP would get canceled, and then once basically canceled, it feels so obvious. The idea that, this could get bigger than gold seems so weird. And then if you put yourself 25 years from now and you're comparing Bitcoin and gold, and you're thinking, which store of value do you want? It's like, why the fuck do you want this like heavy metal that if you're a really rich guy, you can't even carry it all kind of thing? And it's just, it's just sort of, it's, again, I'm not saying that that's expected to happen, but it's certainly, if you're just buying scarcity, it's a pretty good scarce asset, I suppose. So I think that, I can definitely, I don't find it at all difficult to picture this becoming much bigger than gold, I suppose. Yeah. And I don't even think that it becoming the size of gold is even that bullish. I mean, that it sounds crazy even hearing myself kind of say those words, but it just, yeah, I mean, I just think as time goes on, it's just something that, like, buying something scarce that you can, move around easily, and is hedged against other investments. I think that this, as every country right now is printing a lot of money, and different countries, they're going to fuck themselves over with just how much inflation they serve. And I think that, I think that some countries are going to spiral out of control. And I think that, it's one thing to see, Venezuela not doing so well or whatnot, but a lot of those countries, it's not like anyone ever thought of Venezuela as an economic powerhouse of the world or anything like that. And I think there's room for some countries that we previously thought couldn't fail to fail. And I think that it's like here's an example. Like, let's say, again, I'm a couple days behind on my reading about this, so I'm not sure exactly what UK's strategy is right now. But like with UK's plan for herd immunity and their plans on kind of infecting their whole population, it's not that crazy. If that continues and it turns out to just be like a ridiculously stupid situation, we could reach a point where the rest of the world won't do trade with the UK. It's not, UK people aren't allowed to travel to any countries. We could easily hit a situation. I might be saying easily a bit of a stretch, but like something like that can spiral out of control to where, like, the UK is this like hyper infected race that is not, it can't come in contact with the rest of the world, and next thing you know, their money is worthless because no one wants to trade with them, and everyone is afraid and realize they fucked this up. when you start thinking about something like that, even if you asked me 2 months ago, I would never think, oh, the UK can fail or something. And now you start thinking, well, like it's not outside the realm of possibility if they massively misjudge this thing, I suppose.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
and
they've
like,
yeah, I think they've backpedaled a little bit on the herd immunity. At least the article that I saw said that I don't know what their reasoning was. I think they said we got the calculations wrong, or whoever passed the research along to them, we were wrong in thinking that. I'm not sure if they've totally changed their view on herd immunity, but I think they at least backpedaled a little bit in how confident they were in that working. But with Bitcoin and it being an inflation hedge, and also, I mean, even without something like herd immunity, even without something like the coronavirus, fiat currencies have been failing ever since they were created, like 1600s, 1700s. You go back to the first central bank over and over and over, right? They last like 100 years and then they fail. And I think people, it's what we talked about at the beginning of the show. It's like, I watched what was happening in China and I was like, man, that's brutal. I can totally see the impact. I don't think that eventually comes to the US and then could be catastrophic for the global economy. But now we're here and it's like, oh, that shit can happen to us. And I think people start to realize, wow, like, okay, it happened in Venezuela. You can get serious inflation. All of a sudden, that's happening in my country. And my economy's strong, but the central bank and humans have kind of the same psychological biases and all these different things. Has that always been your thesis with Bitcoin? And has that changed with the most recent drop? Because I know there's some people, it seems like have a good grasp of conviction. Your friend definitely does. And Bitcoin's kind of the ultimate test of conviction. People have to have that conviction to hold through the volatility. I think some people get into it and they don't really have a thesis. They don't really know why it should go up, right? They want to make a quick swing, make $1 million or something. It sounds like you kind of had that thesis going in. Has your thesis changed? Because some investors are looking at this and saying it dropped. Oh fuck, it's not acting as a hedge. What am I invested in? Has your thesis changed at all now that it's dropped?
I would say not really. If anything, if you look back through my tweets when that's within a couple of days of when I was making those World Series bets, I mentioned how I sold a moderate amount of my Bitcoin. I bought some gold, and the idea behind that is not that I think long term this will be that Bitcoin's going to fail or anything. It's like every trade I make within Bitcoin is with the goal of making more Bitcoin. And I think there's a decent number of people that fit into that same category. Sorry, every trade I make within crypto is with the goal of making more Bitcoin. And I think a decent number of people fit into that category. And I think that we can end up in scenario. Yeah, I think that basically, so one, I was very bearish on the halvening. I'm a big believer that when something seems obvious, it becomes crowded. And when everybody thinks the same thing, everybody has to be wrong, kind of thing. And it's like when everybody looks and you see this first halvening, it went up 5,000%. This second halvening, it went up 2,000%. Okay, this next one, it's going to go up, 3,000% or whatever everybody is thinking. It's like there's nothing to really back that up. There's a little bit of science to back it up in the sense of, okay, there's less sell pressure from miners, but then if you zoom out a little further and you think, let's say you're thinking of your buddy who's a crypto trader and what his strategy is, probably for somewhere between 6 to 18 months leading up to the halvening. Let's call it 6 months or something. 6 months leading up to the halvening, whatever amount of selling the average trader would have been doing has been depressed, where it's like everybody is selling less because everybody is bullish on the halvening. And so like when you have this thing, even if miners print 1,800 coins a day, now they'll only be printing 900 coins a day. A lot of miners don't sell. Most of them are, bullish on the space. And so maybe this only takes out a couple hundred coins of sell pressure. But then if you think through, 18 million coins out there, how many of those people, want to sell some coins at some point, but haven't been because they're waiting for the halvening? There's probably basically a backlog of 1 million BTC ready to get dumped on the market that people would have sold leading up to this. So first of all, I was bearish on the halvening when everybody seemed to think it would make price go up. And second of all, I do think that, a lot of, when shit gets bad, everything goes down. There's gold is down, every people flee to cash. And I just thought there would be, a flight to cash in this. And, I think I think it's sort of at levels we're at, and especially levels when we were at like 4K. I think if you look at like a timeline of like a year or more out, super bullish. But then it takes some time for Bitcoin to work as it's supposed to. And I've tweeted about this a few times where I think it's probably a decade before it works as an actual economic hedge. But I think that like it feels to me like this, when people are reflecting on Bitcoin being an economic hedge, coronavirus is a good thing that they can point back to, where it's like, wow, other stock markets took 7 years to recover. Bitcoin is up, 300% in 4 years or something. It's like, I think that there is, maybe that it's up 300% from a bottom of $1,800 or, something like that. You don't really know, but it's just, it's just something where eventually people will start using Bitcoin the way it's supposed to be used, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I don't think the time is now. I think most investors, myself included, up until early 2018, they've mostly just seen the way up. Like even guys that have, even say my business partner, if his average buy was at, $600 or something like that, he has seen a big multi-year dip and then a huge rally and then another multi-year dip, but he's still up 1,000% on his investment. That's not a truly experiencing all stages of the market or anything, but it's just like, I think as time goes on, you'll have more and more, coins be held by people who are holding them kind of the way gold gets held. And I think that, I think it just takes time for that to evaluate. So, we shorted some Bitcoin, maybe decreased our Bitcoin exposure by 20% or something. And then, we rebought half of that. I mean, I think it was a terrible knife catch in terms of our timing. We sold around 9,700, and then like I bought at 6,500, where like 8 minutes later it's like 5,900 or something like that. So it was definitely not the it was not a very successful knife catch, but I mean it was still a successful trade in terms of the ROI of that. But probably could have been a better trade there, I suppose.
Sure, there's always some left on the table. It's never going to time out perfectly. But yeah, I mean, even looking at like gold back in 2008, I was just talking with this analyst I just had on the show, and we were looking at gold in the last economic crisis, and it's like, central banks start printing, gold should be an inflation hedge, but it doesn't really perform that well at the beginning, and it's just because the only thing people want right now when they're panicked, they want cash. Right? It doesn't matter if something should be an economic hedge or that it is an economic hedge or that it has a scarce supply. People want cash. They want to buy toilet paper. They want to feel safe. They want to have a gun, especially people in the U.S. They love their guns. They love their toilet paper. Exactly. We don't want we don't want Bitcoin. Most people can't even wrap their head around it. They thought it was an idea that could make them $10,000. So I think it's really important to be able to separate the short term and the long term.
And I do. That's a great point you make regarding gold. Like I think for anyone watching this who hasn't really looked at gold prices, if you go and look at a graph of gold and chop it off at the start of 2009, and you just look at that, you look at the graph, you look at gold from 1980 to 2009 or to end of 2008, I suppose. You look at that and you're like, oh shit, the economic crisis killed gold. Gold has like this 25-30% dip, and you're like, wow, gold sucks. And then you zoom out, 2 years further, and you see gold rallies, I don't know, 200, 250% off the bottom in, one of the most, violent, uptrends it's ever had. And it's like when you go and see that, it kind of makes you realize that, it's like once markets recover, or once people are, want reasons to get out of cash, gold can become great. It becomes scarce. And if the government's printing a bunch of money, this is a useful thing to have. And I think that, likely both gold and Bitcoin will have similar trajectory to that. I think a lot of money is going to get printed over the next couple of years, and I think gold breaking all-time highs wouldn't be very surprising. And then I think that and I think with Bitcoin, like I think it feels to me like if we get to a really I think we need to hit like a hyperinflation type thing for us to break all-time highs during bad economic times. Like basically, if Bitcoin breaks 20K in the next few years, it feels to me like it's a result of USD becoming worthless rather than Bitcoin becoming great. That's what I think. I think it can perform great and outperform almost all other assets. But I feel like I still feel like we're in a spot where people buy things when they're feeling rich and sell things when they're feeling poor.
Yep.
And I don't think many people are going to be feeling rich, the next few years. So I think that, I think even though it's good for Bitcoin and better for Bitcoin than almost, anything else. Oh, fuck me.
For everyone listening, anyone watching here on YouTube, we lost connection there for a second. We're back. But Mike, before we wrap things up, it seems like, and with the global situation, with what's happening with these central banks and Bitcoin's volatility, I don't think you're going to be spending that much less time on Bitcoin. I think it's only maybe going to get more interesting for you. Are you ever going to make the trip back to poker? Is that something that's completely you've moved on for? It's probably just poker shares and Bitcoin and crypto from here on out. Have you thought about that? I mean, you made a run at the WSOP last year, but are you ever going to play professionally again? Have you kind of closed that door?
Yeah, I personally think poker, it's a great job, but an even better hobby, I suppose, where it's just something where, I think I've, accomplished a lot in the game, really tested myself, excelled more at something than I have at anything else in my life. But at the same time, I kind of, I think I was just kind of hitting a wall where I sort of knew the steps to stay on like the bleeding edge of poker. I didn't really like the direction it was going. I didn't like the emphasis on computerized strategies. I much prefer, the wild west, like, I play shitty, you play shitty, but like, I know you like to throw scissors, so I like to throw rocks. I much prefer, I much prefer kind of like dumb man's poker than like, smart man's poker, I suppose. And sort of as it's gotten, as the direction it's going, I think it's becoming, much, you play much more like a computer. And then I've also felt like, and I'm a little bit surprised there haven't been more developments here. Like you've had like random, cheating scandals or whatnot, but like you haven't had like what I think is going to become very common in poker is where, you get something like, a contact lens with a display on it. And now you're sitting there, even playing live poker, and you're using a computer to play. And I kind of assumed by if you ask me in 2014, 2013, where the way computers are progressing, this is back in days when everyone's talking about Google Glass and whatnot, and I just thinking about how computers are improving at the game as well as tech is improving. I would have assumed by 2020 people would be able to just have a computer onto their contact lens. And I mean, if it's not now, it's likely in a few years from now. I just don't like how technology can change that game. And it's also, I know that the steps required, like the hard work required to stay very current is just not the type of work I enjoyed that much. So I just felt like this is a little bit egotistical, but I always kind of like, sitting down at the table and knowing that the quite good professionals know I'm better than them. and I was never a number one. I was probably, like I would say probably never top 5 kind of thing. But, I think I was like solidly top 10, top 20 for the majority of my career. And I like that, these guys, know that I'm better. And it's like, I don't like being in their shoes where I'm sitting down with the top 20 players and knowing that they're way better than me. Like, I didn't want to stick with competing, and I didn't want to like fade to mediocrity. Like, I don't want to see myself slip to number 50, number 100, number 500 or whatnot if I'm not working. So it's like I'm okay to show up as a hobby, show up playing for a hobby and know that I'll be, playing a strategy that's 4 years outdated. I'm much more, my ego can handle that much more easily than it can handle like half-assing my job and knowing, like when we were talking earlier about how crypto's evolved from you counter trading, just idiots to like, elite traders counter trading, not that great of, professional traders. I don't want to be that guy who, the pros are making a living off of me kind of thing. Yeah. So that, I didn't really want, I just don't, I don't think my ego can handle that. So I think that that's the way that I kind of envisioned my poker career going the next couple of years. So I just kind of wanted to leave the game on a high note. So okay. I don't think, I don't think I'll ever, if we end up in a spot where, I don't know, PokerShares dies, and Bitcoin, Nuriel was right, and Bitcoin was worthless after all. Okay, yeah, I'm at that stage, I'm not rich enough, and you'll be seeing me at the tables again probably. So it would probably be, if I go back to the game, it would more be out of like I don't know, a feeling the need to go make some more money than it would out of getting really excited to go back to competing at the game. And throughout it, I was the competition drove me quite a bit, and that it doesn't really, I don't have as much drive for it as I used to, I suppose.
I get it. Well, I don't know the financial position of PokerShares, but I do know that Nuriel will not be right. I don't speak in absolutes, but I just know that guy won't be right. And luckily, you still have a Wild West here in crypto, so I imagine you'll be able to stay busy. Do you have, in your transition to spending a little bit more time on this and the business, obviously Bitcoin's probably more exciting to think about for my audience. Do you have like a memorable, I'm sure you have memorable poker hands, do you have a really memorable trade as you kind of look back on your career right now, like a best trade, or you can even, a worst trade would be fun as well.
I think someone recently had some tweet went viral where people were asking crypto traders, describe yourself. You describe your crypto trading strategy with a GIF or whatnot, or with a picture. Yeah. And it was like, my GIF was, the guy standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, where it's like, I really love shorting the things that look like you should never short them, I suppose. Yeah. Where it's like, I've hit it out of the park. I think I've had about three or four scenarios over the years where I've really hit it out of the park, and then one where I got beaten up really bad, and one or two where I've gotten beaten up somewhat bad. But I guess the best one of all, I think is, and this is one that I thought I might get we thought we might get our account suspended for this. But it was such a good trade that it felt like our account's going to get banned or whatnot. So I'll tell the story on. Yeah, I don't know if this is the best trade, but I think it's one of the better stories.
Yeah.
Are you familiar? Are you familiar with clams or no?
I know clams. I kind of see where you're going with this. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So with clams, So my partner, he is. I'll just mention this right now in case any exchange owners are watch the podcast or whatnot. I would be shocked if there's more than a handful or a dozen guys in the world that are better at understanding kind of the rules of crypto exchanges and like the nuances of like what each exchange is doing than my partner. So if anyone's out there and wants someone to kind of like audit their systems and see what they're fucking up or whatnot, I think he's insane. He's the type of guy. A good way to describe him: he's never played a board game in his life without reading the rule book cover to cover. So he knows exactly what's kind of going on everywhere. And so with him, we've always, when our goal is just to trade and own every, and just trade on every market and do everything we can to own Bitcoin, or to earn Bitcoin. What he's always kept his eye on is every single coin that you're allowed to short, any coin that you're allowed to short, especially obscure ones. So, Poloniex, they have like, I don't know, 25 coins that you can trade on margin. Most of them are the big coins. They're the Ethereum, they're the Ripple, they're the Bitcoin Cash or whatnot. And he always loved the coin clams, and he loved a couple other of those just total shit coins that there's no reason they should ever allow margin trading. But for some reason, Poloniex, had them allowed margin trading on them, because they thought it was cool in 2014 and they just didn't update things. So it's like what we would do is, to be able to like trade more coins, you short 1 Bitcoin worth of clams, you buy 1 Bitcoin worth of clams. Okay, now you can trade this, you can arb it across different exchanges and whatnot. And so it's like he's just always had his eye out for every single coin that you're allowed to short. Like if you were to ask him right now, list every coin that you can short on a reliable exchange, I think, if it was like a Sporkle test, I think he would get perfect. So he's very good at that, and he's just always paid attention, especially to the unconventional ones, because if those coins ever have a pump, like a lot of people might not know you can't short them if you can't short them on BitMEX, if you can't short them on Finex, if you can't short them on the traditional platform. So Clams has always been kind of like his baby or whatnot. And when Clams was pumping, it was, it had like this is when every alt was getting killed. Clams was like, it rallied 2,000% or 3,000% or whatnot. And you look at the order book, and the order book just had like the strongest buys you could ever imagine. It had 700 Bitcoin buy orders that just the whole market cap of this coin is like 4,000 Bitcoin or something insane like that. I had these 700 Bitcoin buy orders that were just like chased the way up the book for like a month or two. And we just started thinking, how could this be possible? We started thinking like, what's going on here? And the only plausible thing we could see that would make this the appreciation be real is there's some casino that allows betting in Clams, and we were thinking maybe if that casino is getting acquired by someone else, there's like, so we're trying to think of some plausible reason that this thing could be pumping. Basically it felt like there was almost no reason. And you look at the trading volume just stays low, and he just knew that there was something like 40 or 50 Bitcoin available, for margin trading. And it's like, if you look through, basically, we just saw this price. It had gotten so, outlandishly high that we just took out like a reasonably large short on this. And if you look through the graph of like how much Clams volume was, you can basically see our trade. I forget if we shorted 25 Bitcoin worth or at 30 Bitcoin, somewhere in that kind of range. And then like 18 hours later, the wheels fall off, where it's like we were probably the biggest trade on Clams in the last like month or two. And then like 18 hours later, it drops like 90% in like, in one 1 minute candle. And it's like, if people, read back and see like kind of what the scam that was running there was, but like, it's pretty likely our trade is what spooked the guys running the scam, where they were seeing, what happened, what happened there, like what's going on with this market, what the fuck is going on. And I think that the guys that were involved in that trade were likely just, they likely got spooked. Maybe they didn't understand that, there's only like 40, 50 Bitcoin. After our position, there's probably only 10 or 20 Bitcoin left for margin trading in the book. Likely they didn't realize that and didn't realize that, hey, there's not enough liquidity to really eat up their whole 700 Bitcoin buy wall or whatnot. But anyway, it's somewhat likely that our trade kind of sparked that dump. And then, when we closed it, didn't close at like, the bottom or close to the bottom, but still had like a 70. If you could have had a 90% ROI, maybe we had 70 or 75% ROI, which is insane to do on a short. And, then we have like, our VIP contacts at Poloniex are messaging us being like, what are you guys involved? And we're just like, we're over here just being like, you don't expect the trade to, we thought this, like, the thing that kind of inspired this is, were you trading the night when BCH pumped to like 0.4 or 0.5 Bitcoin?
I was watching that. Yeah.
Okay, so that was one of our other trades that it went quite well, but it was just like, if you remember the order books there, you had these 10,000 Bitcoin buy walls at such insanely high prices. Like it was the biggest buy walls I've ever seen on an altcoin, and it's just like when you have this like the strongest support you could imagine, it just seems like in this industry those are always spoofs basically. And when we were really getting flashbacks seeing this wall to just if BCH was up to 50 million sats, it was 7 million sats a month or a month and a half later or something crazy like that. And when it just felt like such similar behavior, and it just felt like there's no way that this continues. And so we took out that short, and it went well. Eventually the site did their investigation. They realized that we had no involvement there, but that was a pretty memorable one where you don't expect something to go, if you were to picture how it plays out perfectly in your head, you're like, okay, the walls disappear, it goes back to a regular price, and we live happily ever after or whatnot. And it's like, well, that happened, and you don't, and it's like you look, and it had this crazy rally, but every day it was 20K volume today, 50K volume today. You don't have big volume, and you're just like, it just feels like eventually the music's going to stop, but we just didn't expect it to be so sudden. And yeah, so I guess as far as memorable trades, that would probably be it. Do you have any examples for yourself of memorable trades you've made that that your viewers wouldn't have heard about yet, I suppose? Or is there, I always like hearing, these types of crazy trades people have made, whether good ones or bad ones, from other people as well.
I'm trying to think. I mean, just really the craziest time in crypto was obviously the ICO boom. And one of the things that I think not a lot of people gave credit for or acknowledged as they look back and say, look, a lot of people that made money, well, this did happen too, so they can rightfully think this. A lot of the money that was made was probably made, I don't know if it was legal or illegal, but very unethical in terms of how VCs and some people would structure deals, because they would get into a private sale, and then those tokens would dump, and I would look at white papers, and I would understand who was getting what deal, and then I would hear about a deal that wasn't even on the white paper. So that's all going on. But I think a lucrative part of the market that was maybe misunderstood was actually tokens that that would happen, right? So there was that boom, and that was November, December of 2017. Then you go through all the way even through March to April of 2018. Those deals were still really hot, and tokens would hit Binance, and it was still really hot. Coins would hit, and they would just do really well. But Bitcoin was also crashing at that point in time, and alts were pulling back at that point in time. And there were these ICOs where you go through a month where you're talking to people you've never met on Telegram and trying to get size into some ICO that you've never really heard about, but your friend on Telegram that someone else can vouch for said it could go to Binance, and they have Mark Cuban as an advisor, and you're like, all right, we should fire on that. And you go through a month of that kind of stuff, and you're just itching for the next deal. You're like, my God, these things are just printing money. And then, a week later, everything's crashing, and no one wants to get into a deal. And now you're just praying to God that you actually get your allocation when it comes out. So you're going through these cycles, and it was one of the cycles where you're just praying that the money you have in, you can get your allocations back. So not a lot of people were excited about tokens, and there was a token Loom, and there was probably quite a few others Request, Enigma, a lot of these things that were hitting exchange, but no one was excited about them anymore, because you'd seen a couple tokens hit and then flop, and it was oh God, maybe the music stopped. And IDEX at the time was the next iteration of Ether Delta. And I don't know how much you played around in Ether Delta, but it was this decentralized exchange way before DeFi was a word. And people would log on there, and I think you could list any token. There was no liquidity providers really. And basically, I think they actually got shut down eventually because they weren't as decentralized as they said. But basically, ICO tokens would land on Ether Delta before they would hit an exchange. And if a token really wanted to hit an exchange, they would really try to boost their numbers on Ether Delta. So Ether Delta was really hot, but it was turned out to be a really shitty platform. IDEX came after them, and they started they carved out a niche, and I don't think many exchanges have been able to do this. I don't think IDEX has got enough credit for it. But IDEX carved out this niche of, before a really hot ICO token would hit Binance or Bittrex, it would land on IDEX. And I realized the market was pretty down, and it was Loom had just hit IDEX. I don't know, there was 3 or 4 others. I might be wrong with Enigma and Request. But all 3 or 4 of those that we had missed our allocations for to get into the pre-sale or the private sale that we wanted, I was you know what? These things are barely at ICO, or they're a little bit below ICO. I still think we should fire on them. Maybe that guy that we barely fucking know on Telegram wasn't lying, and they will go to Binance. And sure enough, I think Loom, Request, and Enigma, I only remember those 3 because those were probably pretty big positions. All 9 or 10x for I have no idea the reason, but they just did. You buy them on IDEX, and you're sitting there and hoping your bids get filled. And there was another one, Tomo, but yeah, it was just kind of it was the Wild West of it was still an optimism around scaling was really hot, unit bias was really big. I mean, there was these weird themes that would just happen in the market, and it felt like everyone was chasing it together. And I don't think that exists anymore in crypto. I think people look at maximalism and say, man, the maximalists are crazy. That's a small minority. When in fact, I think that's probably the majority. I think a lot of people are no, Bitcoin has value. I'm not sure about all this other stuff. You go back to 2017, early 2018, a lot of people were kind of chasing everything and saying, maybe these altcoins do have value. Maybe this thing is the next Bitcoin. Maybe this thing is the next Ethereum. And we just haven't seen that kind of life anymore for a long time. But back then it was like, if you could identify a week or two period where people lost that attitude, but it was coming back in cycles, that was kind of the best trade for me. So it was like that group, I don't know, it was like a handful of those coins that hit IDEX, and then it was like, all right, if these things hit Binance, we'll be good. And, and they landed, and it was like, oh god, that's the greatest feeling. So those were fun days.
I missed most of the ICO boom. Like, I think I've definitely been, very much a, kind of Bitcoin maximalist from the start. I participated in 2 ICOs, and both of them turned out to be scams.
Yeah.
So, which is, I mean, it's probably better than a lot of people who invested in, 40 ICOs and 35 ended up being scams or whatnot. But it was, the market cap is like 10K. The other one, the guy ran off with everybody's money. And that one was especially annoying because the guy, who at the time was insanely rich, personally vouched that if it doesn't succeed, he'll pay people their investments back. And then so, I think it wasn't going well. He wasn't doing that well. He started margin trading on BitMEX, and, all of a sudden he wasn't so rich and couldn't really fulfill those, financial obligations. So, it's like, I literally, it's nice that it was only 2, but it was also, I think it would, even though I never really believed in altcoins, I still think it would have, through my network, some poker players were some, relatively important people on some of these, ICO flipping groups. I still feel like I may have left something on the table by not, getting into, get a good allocations, try to dump it ASAP. I think there was still, even for people who don't believe in the project, I still think there was probably a lot of money to be made. And, I didn't get any of that, lost 100% on one of my ICOs, lost, 75% before the scam happened on the other or whatnot. Sure. So it was, definitely, I'm far from an ICO success story, I suppose.
Go ahead.
I would have liked to, like, basically just seeing now, like, having done more crypto trading, as I mentioned, I didn't do any crypto trading until mid 2017. And it was like, I was always more just like trying to scoop free Bitcoin by arbing that rather than focusing on ICOs. And honestly, the fact that ICOs were so good probably played a role in why markets were so inefficient. Because it's like, if I'm over here, jacking myself off because I made 6%, well, you just made 900% kind of thing. So it's like when everybody is making such insane gains on the successful ICOs, it's like, it leaves, the fact that, Bitcoin's 4% more expensive on one exchange than another, it kind of, nobody really gives a shit about that when they can make 1,000% or 10,000% if they find the right ICO. So I think it was definitely, I think that was, while it did open up, one other hole in the market, the real opportunity there was in the ICO flipping.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, the risk, though, that you exposed yourself to, like, you got a taste of it. But, I mean, like I said, those were 3 or 4 that went well. And what turned me off was eventually, what you realized was it was a lot of this stuff is kind of shady what's happening. A lot of these deals are private. You start to see that people are just getting screwed here. And then you just run into, like, 2 or 3 founders or 2 or 3 projects where you give your money, you realize there's no recourse, and then you're like, whoa. Like, even with small allocations, it starts to be... Like, how do you, like, to break even with how much, let's say you put money into 5 or 6 deals or 10 deals or whatever. It's like if 2 or 3 are running away with all your money, it's like, I have to be hitting 7 or 8 X's to be winning. And it's like the second that stops happening, it's like, like, I'm losing money here. This doesn't really work. And then also it's like, I don't really know if what people are doing is right. So, I still saw an opportunity when things hit market. I was like, this is fair. And I think it's mispriced. But once it got to the level where I was like, I got 2 or 3 times, and I was like, and I just feel like this doesn't turn out well legally for a lot of people involved. I was like, I definitely don't want to be involved. It's been the ICO thing was crazy to watch, but I realized I was like, that's not my edge anyways. I'm not going to sit here and try to be like this pre-sale allocation. People had better connections than me, and I was like, I just don't think I'm going to carve out my niche there. But yeah, crazy times for sure.
It is so funny kind of thinking back through the valuations in hindsight, where it's like, so, I live in Waterloo, Ontario, which they call it Silicon Valley North. I mean, I think they call it that more in Waterloo than they do in Silicon Valley. But basically, we're kind of like the tech capital of Canada, got the most startups, etc. And so knowing so many people from the tech space and seeing just how much their companies are doing, the valuations they have, the amount that they can raise at, like what kind of expenses they have. I feel like you kind of have, you have people that are, very into the tech space, very into the finance space, very into the crypto space, but I feel like not that many people have kind of eyes on several of them. And when I really look at where a company is at, if they can raise $200 million versus where a crypto company is at, if they can raise $200 million, it's just it's just like a guy, you have a guy in a suit who, I don't know, interned at Facebook. It's like, oh, Facebook guy, let's give him $100 million. And it's just, it's so funny when you just, and when you just look at just how expensive a company should be to run. You can run a pretty fucking big company off of, $500,000 a month or, something like that. It's like, if I look through, there are definitely, companies out there that have, have like, real revenue, real profit, have a team of, 50 people, 100 people, whatever it happens to be. And it's like, they don't need these kind of budgets. But then you look at these ICOs and it's like, okay, take this guy, the market rate for him is $150K a year. You're paying him $400K a year and $2 million in tokens. Like, what the fuck is that? It's like every single expense that every single one of these companies had, they were paying 5x what they should be. Instead of paying, 40 grand to lawyers, you're paying 400 grand to lawyers. You have 4 lawyers on your payroll or something. It's just, it's crazy. Yeah.
It was like a divergence. You started to realize this is a great short-term opportunity as a trade. But long-term, this is an awful approach to allocating capital. And if anything, I'm exposing myself to risks far greater than, it was just like, I don't even know if this thing's going to exist. And then, even after that, I'm thinking back, it's like after tokens stopped being a play, and I'm like you, I think I only really saw the long-term, I only viewed Bitcoin as an investment and kind of everything else as a trade. And I still view that the same way when I play with ETH or I play with ADA or EOS or whatever it might be. I still viewing those as a trade, but then it was like, all right, do I want equity in some of these things? And I did 1 or 2 of those deals, and I was like, even this, I was like, I'm still just so skeptical of any of these things surviving. It's like I would almost, I'd rather play Bitcoin. So is the evolution of that approach. It's like that theme died off, and maybe that theme does come back. Maybe altcoins actually do become cyclically attractive, but I think you have to have Bitcoin at a level that excites people, because then people get excited about other things. Or you have to have, I don't really know, an event that brings a ton of retail in. The halvening doesn't bring a lot of retail in. It's great for holders if it does well, but it doesn't really bring people in, right? You have to be in the space to even understand what that means. And then it's like, I don't know, like I just don't, I'm very skeptical of like a cyclical, 5-6 month altcoin uptrend. And if that doesn't exist, I definitely don't want to be taking a position where I have to hold this altcoin for 5 or 6 months. So it's like that strategy was there, and then the snap of the fingers, it was gone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think basically what you need, I think you need euphoria for altcoins to pop, and you need that type of euphoria. It's like it's unlikely your Uber driver is going to be euphoric about Bitcoin at $24,000 Bitcoin. Your Uber driver, if Uber drivers are still around at this point, your Uber driver is going to be euphoric about Bitcoin when it's 90,000 a coin. We need more. We need way more than breaking all-time highs. Like when people get really excited about Bitcoin, and I think it will happen again. They're going to get excited about shitcoins, and it might be at that point, like whatever. Ripple's at 200 sats, and then it pumps to 10,000 sats, whatever it happens, and then probably people like the newer, shinier shitcoins at that point or whatnot, but probably some of the old, like a lot of the old shitcoins that no one gives a shit about, still have these 100Xs at various stages in December 2017, January 2018. I think it's just like, people will be so far underwater that a lot of people won't be selling on the way up. And, I think that history will find a way to repeat itself. People will get excited if, people want to buy 90 grand Bitcoin. They'll want, if this thing's 5 cents, now it's $1, now it's $10. Well, I could buy this thing for $10. What if it goes to 90,000 like Bitcoin did?
Yeah.
I think that it feels like we're so far removed that we can't really picture that. But once it happens, and once the new money, gets excited, once there's euphoria, I think there will be a shitcoin run up. And it's like, I don't think I don't think that'll, so if Bitcoin got down to 32% market dominance last time, I think it's a scenario where maybe during an insane Bitcoin run up where, you've had the government default or, something that sparks, true interest in crypto. I think that maybe you hit a spot where Bitcoin gets up to 85 or 88% market dominance or whatnot. And then you have this crazy shitcoin run up where Bitcoin drops down to 50 or 60% market dominance. I don't think it's hard for me to picture the spot like we were at January 2018, where alts were worth more than twice as much as Bitcoin. Like I can't really envision it being that euphoric, but I do think we'll hit a point where, at some point shitcoins are going to outperform Bitcoin. Maybe that'll be going from 92% market dominance to 75 or whatever it happens to be. But like when the dumb money comes in, they're going to be buying dumb things.
Yeah,
I think we take some degree of absurdity. Like I don't think Uber drivers are going to be excited about 16K Bitcoin. I think we really need to wait until they're on TV teaching you how to buy 50K of Ripple in a click. You need that type of environment before everybody's hyped about it. And I think that I think it's something that will likely happen. I think that there will be more people wanting to buy Bitcoin than there will be wanting to sell Bitcoin, especially if everything else is going down. And yeah, I don't know. I think give it enough time and we'll find room for a shitcoin run up. And people will get burned again. People will be thinking, oh, this time it's different. When the Bitcoin network gets congested, or I think also there's a lot of room where when things get high, I don't think we're immune to 51% attacks. And I think at some point 51% attacks not only like could happen, but I almost think should happen. That sounds a little bit messed up, but I think that a lot of exchanges probably aren't prepared for how they should be handling 51% attacks. And I think the ecosystem sort of needs that to happen and to prove that we can power through that. And I could just picture a situation where, the world's eyes are on crypto, everyone's buying, and just like some people who own a bunch of shit coins take out a short on Bitcoin, buy up, the computing power of 40 million computers or whatnot, or just like bribe mining pools or whatever it happens to be, and just get more hash power than everyone else, and cause chaos for a couple of weeks where everyone's like, oh, dump Bitcoin, buy this other dog shit, So I think there is also room for issues with Bitcoin that haven't been addressed yet, and I think things like a crazy if I was like a George Soros type, I had my $5 billion and I was trying to think of how to turn it into 15. I think a really big short, a fuckload of money invested in computing power, giant shorts on Bitcoin. If you're feeling sufficiently unethical, try to scam some exchanges by putting enough false transactions in your fake blocks to get a bunch of money on there, dump all these fake Bitcoin into other coins before it's happened, run it on enough accounts. You can make if someone does a really smart 51% attack, they can make so much money, have some outlandishly big Bitcoin short. Of course, people are going to panic during this. You buy the dip. Like if this is like shorting Bitcoin from 16K down to 60K down to 12K or whatnot, you have some insane short where you've counter traded the whole market, and now everybody will be so panicked where it's not like you'll resolve this 51% attack and deal with all the moving parts within it. The chain can likely survive within an hour or whatnot, but it'll take probably a few weeks before the dust settles and everyone feels comfortable with it. And I think that's just something that will happen, but it's something that almost has to happen to really see that Bitcoin can survive, I guess. And I think sorry for that tangent.
No, it's good. I mean, when I think of those attack vectors, I mean, it's wild. We're moving in uncharted territory as Bitcoin gets bigger, and the network gets stronger, and all these things that are positive for Bitcoin's underlying fundamentals. At the same time, it's now the size, and it will continue to get to be a size where new attack vectors, which didn't even make sense for people to try, do all of a sudden become attractive for people to try. And outside of 51% attacks, I mean, even think of something much simpler, like what just happened on BitMEX. Like I don't know the exact numbers. I don't
That was so crazy.
There are people on Twitter that know the exchange mechanics behind how you could kind of create that scenario or that situation in a vacuum better than I can. But you know, you could imagine it, and it's like it's not that much money. It is a lot of money, but it's not that much money to start a cascading liquidation on a certain exchange, or the type of Oracle games that you can start playing. We've already seen in DeFi this year where people are. There was just one last week. I mean, it's funny. That's the most interesting part of DeFi, I think, right now, is how people are squeezing money out of the system almost risk-free. There was a trade that just happened during the Bitcoin crash where MakerDAO, or you know, whatever it is that lets people have these synthetic ETH long positions, whatever protocol or whatever system it is that supplies the prices to that quote unquote decentralized system, they realized that the liquidations were happening at such a rate that like the Oracle, I don't know how it exactly works, no one wanted to bid those liquidations. So someone just submitted a bid at $0 for like all the liquidations. It was like hundreds of thousands of ETH or whatever. And they walked away with this massive chunk of money. Like they cleared the liquidations. They bought all this ETH for $0. Like that was the quote that got accepted. And
wow.
it was just because, you know, there's no system in place that should check. Like that was the best bid. Take the best bid, match it with the best ask. And it's like, so there's these weird things that are happening still, both in DeFi, but I think will also happen with Bitcoin. Maybe not at the protocol level. Maybe it does happen exchange level. But yeah, man, those are all going to be trading opportunities. It's the Wild West. That's what makes this thing so interesting. The one thing before I let you follow up here is I really do hope people listening, a lesson that I've learned throughout this, whatever risk Bitcoin poses there, whether it's security risk with mining, whether it's the volatility, whatever it might be, that risk is probably multiplied on the altcoin. I think that's a trade-off that the longer you're here, you start to realize, sure, you think your alt might be able to do 10,000% and Bitcoin's expensive, whatever it might be, but you really do have to think, what is the risk? What am I not seeing with this altcoin? You know, how is it inferior? And if you do think it's superior, maybe do a little bit more research as to why that altcoin is more risky.
And I think that it's also useful for people to think, like, if you think through, you know, people who actually own Bitcoin. Like if you take the guy you know with the most Bitcoin, or the 5 guys you know with the most Bitcoin, and ask them why they like Bitcoin, that for most of them, it's usually not that they think it's superior technology. It's usually that they think it's, you know, it's a stronger network. There's, you know, more dollars in it. There's a longer chain. There's more, you know, more people incentivized to keep this going. There's less, you know, most people aren't most people aren't thinking, oh, it's like, there's nobody who thinks they like Bitcoin because it's the fastest coin, or, you know, the reason, you know, if people are comparing it more to gold than they are to your shitcoin kind of thing. And it's like, you know, you can be in a Telegram chat all talking about that shitcoin, all patting each other on the back, and like, yes, it certainly accomplishes certain goals much better than Bitcoin does. But if you think through where the bulk of dollars are being held and where the bulk of dollars would want to be held in the future, it's relatively unlikely that the tech aspect of your shitcoin is going to be the driving force for its appreciation. By the way, with the MakerDAO thing, do you mind like linking me to some articles on that? Like, where the Maker's a coin that I've always been interested in, but like always been a little uncertain of. But that sounds pretty interesting, and I would like to read more about that.
Definitely. I'll link it, and for people that are listening, you can find that in the show notes. For everyone watching, I'm going to flash that chart in our screen so you can see it. If it isn't MakerDAO and you're listening and you're with Maker, you're an ETH head and you're saying, what the hell, it wasn't Maker, don't troll me for the next week. I know it was some project in DeFi, and those DeFi explosions have been really interesting. I mean, it's like it's making their system stronger, and you know, it's a great narrative for ETH if they can somehow transition to that actually being a driving force of ETH's value. I still don't see the connection there, but yeah, that's a wild. That's even more Wild West than some areas of crypto. It's like, it was that one. There was another hack. There was the flash loans was the thing a week or two before that, where you can get a loan and then pay it back within the same transaction. Originally, it was set up so you could arbitrage. So basically, companies, I think like Dex's, Uniswap, or Kyber, I'm not sure which of them actually plays this role, but they give you a set amount of ETH in a transaction, in a block, and then you're allowed to arb or do something within that block, and someone set it up that they took the flash loan, they brought this to the DEX, they shorted or longed or whatever and did these things, and it was such a degree that it really cleared out the books. They could basically cover and then pay back that flash loan, and it was like printing free money, and this went on for a week. And this most recent one was to do with the crash. But yeah, it's the realization that Bitcoin isn't, it's not a tech thing, right? I think a lot of new investors, myself included, a few years back would look at this and say, well, that coin's faster. Maybe that technology actually does beat out Bitcoin. And then you start to realize, you're not investing in a tech company. This is a new form of money. And as you go back and study forms of money, it's not like, we use paper or, gold because it was the best technology or the best conductor or all these different things. It wasn't a certain property. It was the collective understanding of that thing had value, and the 6 properties of money and all those different things kind of play a role. But really, it's how many people accept it. Is it scarce? And all these some of those very basic characteristics that will trump how fast can I move this. So it's a weird thing that takes a while to realize. But I do hope people that are listening and saying, man, some of those themes sound interesting, I'm going to start buying ICOs, or I'm going to try to buy this shitcoin that can go up 10,000%. Do some research and think about the trade-off there.
Yeah, another good, I think a reasonable comparison for a reasonable comparison that I don't mind, that I kind of like making, is let's say you're a better painter than Van Gogh. Okay, let's say you're such a fantastic artist. Anyone can look at your artwork and think that is strictly better than Van Gogh's artwork. Let's just say that that's the world we're living in. It's like your paintings aren't going to be worth anything because there's unlimited supply. Like the moment that I go and I shoot you in the head, now your paintings are worth something because there's a limited supply. Yep. We know how many of your paintings there are, and we can never be any more. It's like there is a limited, there's a limited supply of some things and an unlimited supply of other things. And even if there's a limited supply of your shitcoin that has, better tech than Bitcoin, there's an unlimited supply of people that can now get even better tech than you, there isn't such a long stand, even ETH hasn't described their token economics yet, basically. It's very, it's like with Bitcoin, you kind of, what you're getting. With a Van Gogh, what you're getting. And like, maybe you only have 6 paintings, and then tomorrow you snap your fingers and you start making, you're such a good, fast artist, you start making 100 paintings a day. You just print 100, they're better than Van Gogh's paintings, but you flood the market, and it's just like that. It's I think it's useful for people to sort of see that, to see that, like, there's, in the same way your shitcoin can have a better quality, other things can have a better quality than yours, I suppose. So it's just something I think is helpful if people are mindful of. Oh, and then the one other comment I was going to make regarding what happened on BitMEX is I think that I think it's useful for people to be wary of these futures exchanges in general, where I still trade on BitMEX. I think BitMEX is sweet. I think it's like, in a lot of ways I think it's great, but especially, it's like when you buy on other exchanges, you're buying a Bitcoin, and when you're, and especially when you can't use USD or anything else as collateral on BitMEX, like when you long something on BitMEX, you're effectively speculating that the price will never go beyond your liquidation price. You're trying to get more Bitcoin, but you're also Kristen, you mind taking this? You're also kind of, you're just speculating you don't get liquidated as well. And it's tricky where, as we saw what happened last Thursday, the risk of a crazy liquidation is way different than people might have thought. Like, in my account, my, liquidation price there was like 1,900. And I assume Bitcoin's, never dropping from 7,000 below 1,900. I just think in my head, I was kind of thinking, hey, Bitcoin probably isn't going to get 70% worse today. But at the end of the day, you see futures there are trading at 3,300 and it's 4,000 on every other exchange. It's not about, and it was that way for like an hour or more than an hour. It's not about what Bitcoin is worth. It's about what the price is on that futures exchange. And especially if you're trading with, a substantial percent of your capital, I think it's useful for people to be wary of that, I suppose. So that would be just kind of one of my comments, that like you're not really buying Bitcoin. You're just speculating that the price that futures exchange has won't go below your liquidation price or above your liquidation price on the other.
Exactly. The risks, it's some of those things that you don't really have to think about if you're trading any other asset except in crypto. There's risks here that just don't exist anywhere else. It's still pretty insane. So, yeah, BitMEX.
Yeah.
Gosh, BitMEX. Man, I don't even want to talk about BitMEX, but yeah, that was a crazy, pretty wild day. There was some funds actually that there was a notable fund that just went under today. I imagine there's probably going to be some news of other funds that also crapped out on that, and probably some large traders as well. I mean, if you look at the leaderboard there, they have a public leaderboard. There was a jockeying of positions of some really notable ones. One or two are public. I think the other one are Anon. But yeah, it's still the wild west. Do you still like trading on BitMEX? Do you?
Yeah. So I would say I do for the simplicity. I do. I saw in the sense that
they lagged on you though. You had a tweet.
Pardon me?
They lagged on you. You had a tweet. You're like, man, I can't imagine if this was like, my full-time thing, if I was a quote unquote pro trader. Were they lagging out on you?
Yeah, well, I was commenting about the circuit breakers on traditional markets. That the idea that they stop markets for 15 minutes. For me, if I don't get a trade through for 8 seconds on BitMEX, I'm like, so mad. And it's just like I'm just thinking all these guys, at their desks trading, real markets. Like the idea that it actually stops for 15 minutes, and especially it might have gone years without a stop. And then now it starts stopping, every day. It just kind of reminds me of like BitMEX overload. But I think after that, right now have no funds on BitMEX, and I've usually had funds on BitMEX all the time, pretty much. I think I likely will, but maybe I would be comfortable having a third as many funds as I might have normally had. Just not wanting to take on as much risk, and just kind of, it feels like the downside of of something crazy going on is, if I would have thought, what are the chances that Bitcoin drops down to $1 in BitMEX, I might have said, 1 in 5,000 a month ago, and I might say like 1 in 50 now. Just seeing just how low it got, it can happen. And the next time something like this happens, it could be more drastic. And then the other thing I was going to comment on is, people have these, memes about Arthur counter trading you and, things like that. And it's like, whether or not that's going on, I have no idea. But the one thing that I would kind of want to mention is even if that's not going on, if there is no counter trading on different exchanges, if you try to put yourself in the shoes, again, when I talked earlier about how I'm not ready to run a big tech company, because it's difficult running small tech companies, you try to put yourself in the shoes of like, okay, what do the databases look like within BitMEX? And it's like, okay, you have a database of customer accounts, you have different information associated with that account. You likely have some area where there's a big amount of data stored containing, balances for people and liquidation prices for people. And it's just like, Arthur Hayes maybe has like A++, security for how he handles his computer, and probably plenty of people within BitMEX do. But that doesn't mean every single employee within their organization who has access to various, information on customer account information has that same degree. There are probably people who, click those random links, and, next thing they have malware on their computer. You can't monitor every single employee. So all it really takes is one person to get the right thing onto the right person's computer, and they could easily have, the customer information for all BitMEX users. And it's like, if you can go there and you can look through and see everybody's liquidation price, and it's just like, and if you're a good trader and sufficiently malicious, and you just like build software based on like finding areas where there are a lot of stops or a lot of liquidation prices in a very, short window, and just kind of being able, also being able to possibly, foresee what types of behaviors make them go down. Like it's easy that, it's easy that someone out there could have this information that's effectively the same as BitMEX counter trading you, probably even worse than BitMEX counter trading you, because they don't have to worry about the PR of their own business and getting caught. All it takes is, and again, I could be wrong, and I might be misunderstanding how information is stored, but it just seems it seems somewhat logical to me that someone, yeah, I mean, that someone out there would it would be worth a lot of dollars to the right person to try to figure out exactly where everybody's, liquidation price is. And it's easy for a computer to build strategies based on knowing exactly your trade data. And the more I think about that, the more it just makes me think, I don't really want a lot of money out there knowing that, we've seen something crazy happen. We don't know if people doing this were making money or losing money. We don't know the reasons. We don't know who it was. But it's just like having seen something like this once, where for some reason the price got 15% under market rate. It just kind of freaks me out for wanting to keep a lot of money there. And I just think there's always a chance that there was some sort of data leak and someone just has a feed on someone's computer. And just thinking about that, it makes me a little freaked out, and it makes me more excited to just buy spot, sell spot, and not be too risky with BitMEX, I suppose.
I think it's a little bit that certainly could happen. I think it's a little bit simpler than that, and we can even deviate a little away from BitMEX. You can think about a broker for FX. You can think about a traditional broker and regular equities. You can think about really any market in general. I mean, there's going to be strategies that are in place. I mean, there's a site that I have access to, and a couple other people have access to. There's ways you can find out collectively, at what point a certain percentage of the market would get wiped out. You can look at open interest. You could see, where people that are long, where those aggressive longs were opened, right? What amount of open interest was just open in the last day and at what levels? And then you can start to calculate, okay, what kind of margin are they using? If they're leveraged, 10 or 8x, at what point does momentum really kick in? So it's like, even if it isn't one party maliciously acting, I think Arthur and that team has done actually an incredible job, a better job than people give them credit for.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they've crushed this. They've crushed the space. They weren't first. They make crypto trading cool. I would, if I were to look through most of these exchange owners, I would never think, oh, I would want to be like that guy. I would want to be like that guy. I would definitely want to be like Arthur Hayes. And I think everybody else kind of feels that same way. They've definitely, they've done such an awesome job, with their business. They can go out, send emails being like, eat the shit coin. It should be under $100, make a bunch of money. They've made crypto trading, especially with a fuckload of margin, cool. And they've done an awesome job with their business. But
even their product has been pretty good. Obviously, it's failed at certain points. But I mean, running the most liquid exchange that's getting the most requests, all those different things, people can have their gripes. But that's not an easy task. But even taking BitMEX out of it, right? You can look at any market in the world, and there's going to be systems that are in place, and there's specific strategies that are built to look for that, to look for over-leveraged traders. And you see it with these BART patterns we've had. The conversation I had with Su Zhu when I was out in Singapore, I said, Sue, why do you think, Bitcoin is one of the only assets in the world that has these BART patterns, right? You don't see these in traditional markets. Sure, there's normal volatility, there's higher volatility here, and FX has pretty crazy volatility, and it's, a ton of money is being put into banks. Everyone's trying to earn their 1 or 2%, but why do we have these really weird BART patterns? And he said, well, we're trading an asset, and Sam said this as well, kind of combining what they both said. You can't really call bullshit on the price. So if you wake up and Bitcoin is 10 or 20% higher or 10 or 20% lower, it's not like you can look at the PE ratio or the cash flows and say, oh, that's bullshit, right? It should be higher, it should be lower. It's like, I guess that's the new price. And then also you have a scenario where it's very retail driven, and there's this bounty out there where if one side of the market gets off sides, smart money, or call it whatever you want, whales, are incentivized to kind of somehow clear that bounty. So even if it's like not malicious, it's like, I think that's the market kind of doing its job. It's like it's seeking liquidity. Like where are people off sides? The market's going to go where there's orders. If people are massively over leveraged to the upside, it's like your clam story. It's like, all right, if someone's super long, there's not any more margin in the book, and you short it. It's like, I don't know, if I'm on the wrong side of that, I probably would pull my bids too. And it's like you run into a scenario where cascading liquidations happen. It's like, it doesn't matter if they know where my stop is and your stop is. It's like, there are funds that are going under because they had margin requirements, or they have to exit their positions and they're forced to sell. So I think what happened was panic. I think maybe it was a technological failure. Maybe they really did act as a manual circuit breaker, but really, I mean, it's a hyper volatile asset. It's unregulated. People are using 100x leverage, and I really think what happened was more natural than some people will look back in history and say it is. I think I think what happened was, yeah, it's a volatile asset that you can't call bullshit on, and what happened. Anyways, Mike, we could talk about that for hours. There's gonna be a ton of conspiracies, but
Yeah.
before I let you go, you're probably one of the sharpest bettors that I follow on Twitter. You run a company that lets sharp bettors get action off, and really you've been focusing for the majority of your life looking for opportunity, looking for bets. What's one market or bet that excites you for the rest of the year? You don't have to say what side you're on, or what's a market that really interests you. I know political markets are pretty interesting to you right now. Is that probably the most exciting for you market for you to track right now? What's going to happen with Trump, or is it something else? What opportunity you're looking at for 2020 that people can follow along?
Okay. Yeah. Let me think about that. That's a great question right now.
I usually try to rap like this, so you can think while I talk. I forget who I asked. The reason I do this is because I have a wide range. Sometimes I have a hedge fund manager on. Sometimes I have someone like Arthur Hayes or Sam on. They're running exchanges, and I always say, what's the one theme that you're looking at that people miss? And there's times where I spoke with Sam last month, and it's funny as I go back and listen to these, it's like, God, the writing's on the wall. And Sam was saying, he's like, this run up feels weird. He's like, people are buying, but it's not a lot of volume, and like, why is crypto rallying so hard? He's like, it just feels weird. And then obviously we crash. And then I asked Arthur, and he has an interesting theme about cash is going to be illegal, and people are going to really start to value Bitcoin and its privacy. And he asked some hedge fund managers if they have a coin. But I'm asking you. You look at a lot of betting markets. You might have something a little bit more unorthodox that people might find interesting. What are you looking at? What's mispriced other than the WSOP not happening? There's got to be something on your mind that you think about.
I mean, this isn't really a betting market, I suppose. This isn't even close to a betting market, but I sort of feel like and there's probably there's probably just an 85% chance he's just like racist, but there's probably a 15% chance something big is brewing or whatnot. But I really, the first time that I saw Trump call it the Chinese virus, it felt to me like this could get bad really quick, I guess. I don't know what this would be in terms of Chinese American trade, in terms of what this could be regarding what China knows, what America knows about what this virus is. It's likely just one of those things. Either he's racist, or he knows that tactically he knows his following really likes racism, and that gets him more votes. Hopefully I'm wrong, and the likely thing is that there's not, is that it's bad to say this. Hopefully it's just the president's racist, I guess. But it feels to me, as this has been escalating, as this has been becoming more common, it feels to me like the dealings with America and China could potentially be getting a lot worse. And that's just kind of like whatever scenarios it involves. I just kind of feel like U.S.-China relationships are kind of the maybe a bigger deal than coronavirus even is, I suppose. That's just kind of that it's kind of a conspiracy theorist type thing there, but like I don't know if this could lead to no trade or war, or I don't know exactly, and I hope he's just being racist, I suppose. But I think as far as things that are going on, I think the progression of American-Chinese relationships is something. So that's not really a market. I mean, there's definitely room to speculate on. Every company in the world depends on U.S.-Chinese relationships, and so I think that that is that's kind of the biggest market in the world is the relationship between U.S. and China, I suppose. And so that would be kind of what I'm thinking of as potentially the big thing right now, I guess. And that might not be the type of answer you were looking for, but I kind of feel like that could be something might be brewing, I suppose.
No, I find that interesting too. I mean, there's a ton of people betting on the presidential market. That's going to be one of the most interesting markets to follow. It's going to play a pretty big role as to how all this unfolds. Some of it out of his hands, some of it out of all of our hands, and some of it very directly in how people react. I'm curious, what do you think about his response though? He said the reason he called it called it the Chinese virus, or when I first heard him say that, the way that he responded to the reporter, he said it's because they said American troops spread it, and we can't have the rest of the world thinking it was us. What's your take there as just kind of both nations are posturing and pointing fingers? Do you think it's better just to say, you know what, for him to just ignore that?
I mean, if there's ever a time to be the bigger man, it's this time.
Yeah.
It just seems to me like, okay, if you call me a racial slur, does that mean that I should call you a racial
Probably
slur?
not.
No. And it's like especially not if I'm the leader of the most powerful country in the world attacking, the second most, possibly the most. Like,
Sure.
If fucking China can make this thing, beat this thing, and crush every other country,
probably, yeah.
America's not the most powerful country in the world, and it's like, that sounds, tinfoil hatty, but we don't really know what's going on here. I'm basically just like, I think we're in a world of, there was a long time where I think it was a one superpower world, and I think we're in a two superpower world now, and it just seems like, it's accusing Americans of this is not nice, and it's like even if we assume 100% chance Trump is right, 100% chance that this, Trump is just defending people. There were no racial intentions. He just wants to defend his Americans. If his heart is in the right place, it's still stupid. So it's really, it's kind of, it's just like there are all sorts of different, moving parts here. But I think even if we assume that if we kind of assume that, and it was just him fighting back, that's just, it's so uncalled for, and it's just such a large percent of just such a large percent of people can see this and just be like, like really, it's just really concerned by it, I suppose. And a lot of people, they always justify the actions of their party. It doesn't matter what they do. And I have a couple of friends that love Trump, and they're just like, comparing it to the Spanish flu, or everybody kind of finds a way. And then on the other side of things, a lot of people who dislike Trump, some of Trump's actions, I think, have been smart and have been good, have been beneficial for both the economy and for helping save lives within his country. I think some good decisions have been made, but then you see people who don't like him think every single decision's been poor. I think there's so much at stake that I think it's difficult for people to be objective. But I think this is one where it should be pretty easy to be objective, that you shouldn't be saying that. It's like if that's what they're doing, if that's what they're doing in China, it's like, well, be the bigger man for once in your life, kind of thing. So that's my take there.
Rational way to think about it. I like that framework. And yeah, who knows? Maybe the trade war talks, which completely died down, or at least the news narrative around there that died around Christmas, maybe that spikes back up again. That was a big driver in what was happening in markets, and it kind of just went away. So who knows what happens there. But Mike, before I let you go, actually I do have one more. I like that final question. But I saw this tweet on Twitter. I think it's really important, especially as a lot of people are kind of worried about what's happening in the world. Rightfully so. There's a lot of people that are in a really bad spot right now, don't know what they're going to do with their business, don't know how they're going to be affected. They might have loved ones affected. You made a point that having coronavirus kind of prediction markets is actually beneficial for humanity and getting that information out there. Can you touch on that a little bit? I think that's a really good way to wrap this as people think about corona. What's the impact? Is this all overblown? All that stuff. You had a good point, and I think it's also hopefully, I'm being optimistic here, but I hope that a lot more people kind of do take this seriously, and that leads to more people being healthy, more people being safe. So what were your thoughts there on why we should actually have markets open for coronavirus things?
Yeah, so I mean, I think basically it's I think it's just beneficial to have more information. I think when I talk about how U.S. was suppressing testing, every different governments will have varying degrees of corruption, and I think if you look at, like, say you look at the growth of this virus in Germany, I feel like it looks just like a very organic graph, I suppose. It seemed like they had reasonable testing. They're not only testing super sick people. The death rate is likely, more in line with an actual death rate than these countries that are only testing people like when they're on the verge of death. And, it's just like, it's like you look at that, and I feel like if I were to look through all the countries, I would just like see how they're progressing, see the shape of the curve and whatnot. I would just be like, oh, it kind of looks like Germany is like, probably one that's being honest. And when they say, if they say they have whatever 20,000 cases right now, it might actually be around 20,000. And it's just like, it's useful, to be in a spot where there's, just some degree of transparency. And when, your country is, it sucks, but like, if you're a politician, you're always weighing lives against dollars. You don't want to have to do it, but it's like every single traffic light you install saves lives, but it costs money. You have to figure out, where do we put our traffic lights? They're just so, at all stages of government, you have to weigh, the economy versus lives. And it's like, it's a big complex game they're playing. And it's just like their incentive structure is to kill some people so that the country can make more money, basically. And it's in all regards, not just, in a pandemic is one of the times it's most transparent, I suppose. But it's just like, it's just something where your president is calling it a hoax. You're having all of these things kind of get suppressed. You're having, the word choice of what, of the doctors is changing day to day. Like I remember, I'm in a group chat just kind of where we all watch every single one of these conferences, and just like, it's like at one point they're saying, oh yeah, and if you're 65, that everything's positive. They're like, oh, and if you're over 65 years old, I might suggest not going on a cruise ship. That's one of the first things they say as far as any changing. And then maybe a day or two later, they're like, and if I was in my 60s or 70s, I might make sure that I had enough groceries lying around the house. It's just like they slowly get, in the same way the virus is growing 20, 30% a day, the kind of preventative measures they're discussing are sort of also growing 20 or 30% a day or whatnot. At some point it hit a breaking point where they're like, okay, this thing's called a pandemic. People are dying. Everybody's getting this. And they're at this point, they're actually being somewhat honest with things. But I guess to tie that back to prediction markets are kind of a source you can get to. It's like you can have one guy who knows way more about science than you saying one thing, another guy who knows way more about science than you saying another thing. It's like reading white papers in 2017. No one fucking understands them. You read it and you're like, oh yes, I'm about the tech. But really, there's only like a few hundred guys in the world that are smart enough to really understand all the moving parts, and you sure as fuck know that you're not one of them. Like it's like, it's like, that's how I feel, reading these papers on science, where it's like, I took grade 12 chemistry, I took grade 10 biology, but I don't know fucking anything. And it's like, but a gambling market, I can look at that and be like, oh, look, the grown-ups are out here putting their money where their mouth is, and this is what the consensus is seeing. It's a situation where, it's an open ecosystem where everyone can effectively back up their opinion, and those things likely trend their way toward proper pricing. And it's like, for people, we're talking, I've heard people talking, trying to speculate on, how many people will get this worldwide, how many people will die of this worldwide. And it's like the numbers there, like it's one thing to read some report that says you have two ends of the spectrum. You have one that says, we're making good strides, we only have 20,000 infected, this is what's going on here. And then you read some other guy who says America's probably going to have 180 million get infected. Whatever it is, and it's like you can kind of pick your tribe. You can pick the 5-figure, or you can pick the 9-figure tribe or whatnot. But it's like a betting market allows, it's like, okay, this is the over under on how many people are going to get it. And it's like that's just kind of it feels like the right source. There aren't, like, I don't think there are too many people out there saying, okay, we predict 9 million people are getting it. It's like, it's impossible to come up with a model that says, okay, 9 million Americans are going to get this virus. It's like, it's just kind of tough, but maybe that's a number the betting market might suggest. And if bets say, okay, 9 million Americans are going to get this, it's like, it's way less than these scary estimates saying the whole country will get it, but it's way more than what your politicians are telling you or whatnot. So it's like, it's something like that to kind of see what the market dictates. I think can be helpful, and I think it's I had countless people comment on this, that me tweeting about this throughout late January, and just like kind of at first thought I was wearing the tinfoil hat. But they're guys that know, hey, maybe I'm probably right about things more than 50% of the time, and if I'm kind of staking my reputation on the line, I probably have a high degree of confidence that this could blow up. you can look so stupid. If you, especially poker players are pretty ruthless in general, and if you just say a bunch of dumb things, 6 years later, people are like, Mike, remember when you said coronavirus would be bigger than 9/11? Like, it's like you say shit like that, and you now need to live with the fact, people can jab you with it for the rest of your life, kind of thing. So it's just, I think it got a lot of the poker community taking this thing seriously, preparing themselves and their loved ones, and getting kind of on the ball, I suppose. And I think that, I guess I think that seeing a market actually allows people to assign probabilities and put their money where their mouth is regarding that. So, I think it's something that's helpful. I thought Augur would be a perfect platform for this, where no one needs to really attach their reputation to it. Actually was talking to Joey Krug about this very briefly, and it's just like they're not sure when Augur V2 is coming out. It might be in a month, it might be in 3 months, and they don't know how our markets are going to settle as they pivot. So they're not recommending people do this. I think there's a lot, like the concept behind that, I think is for me, I think like of anything beyond Bitcoin, I think the concept behind Augur is one of the things I like the most in crypto.
Yep.
But seeing the implementation thus far, it really makes you appreciate centralized systems where it's like using looking at how FTX is doing this versus how Augur is doing it. You just kind of, it's tough for me to picture, it's tough for me to picture, a decentralized prediction markets capturing a large share of the market, I suppose.
Yeah. And
you also need the economic incentives to be there. If some company is making too much money off, okay, well, they can still get shut down. It's still, if there's someone to chase, it's tough to build this ecosystem where, the community profits rather than just, a few, the developers profiting, or, et cetera. So it's kind of, I don't know. I think going back to the original point, I think it would have been a great thing if Augur was like more functional the way it was intended to. I think this would be kind of like a perfect market for that platform, where if someone's betting that, it's all done anonymously, et cetera. And
yeah, it's gosh, I was a little bit let down as well, but hopefully they figure that out. But yeah, looking at FTX's implementation, it's an uphill battle. But either way, I think a lot of people have benefited from you putting that information out there. Hopefully a lot of people have benefited from listening to this podcast. If you want to follow Mike, all his information is down below. If you listen to us on iTunes and Spotify, it's in the show notes. And if you watch here on YouTube, thank you so much for stopping by. His links are also right down below. Click it, follow him for anything Bitcoin poker related, or if you're looking for probably a pretty good tip or a pretty good idea of an area he finds inefficient, I wouldn't bet against him. At least all the times I've thought about it, I realized, like the WSOP, at least it tempted me. I was like, I just don't think things are going to be canceled. I was like, I don't know. I'm going to hold off. We'll see. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, of course. It was a lot of fun, and we'll keep in touch and stay healthy, stay safe, and talk soon, man.
Sounds good. See you later.
See ya.